At the edge of Dartmoor, a black hearse drawn by headless horses barrels through the night. Its driver, none other than the damned spirit of Sir Francis Drake. This is the haunting of Buckland Abbey. In the wild, windswept moorlands of Dartmoor, far in the southwest of England, the line between legend and reality blurs. Here, the mist creeps low to the ground, curling through twisted trees and over crumbling stones, and when night falls, they say anything can rise from the shadows. Buckland Abbey is the ancient home of Sir Francis Drake, pirate, explorer, and some whisper, a man who made a dark pact with none other than El Diablo himself. Sir Francis Drake is remembered in history books as a hero, the first Englishman to sail around the world, knighted by Queen Elizabeth I, and a key figure in defeating the mighty Spanish Armada. But, in the wild tales passed down through Dartmoor's villages, his victories came not just from skill or bravery, but possibly from something far more sinister. So the locals strongly believed that Drake's seemingly impossible feats, which included his lightning-fast rebuilding of Buckland Abbey and his naval triumphs, were only possible because he'd sold his soul. As a result of said sale of said soul, it's speculated that when he died, his spirit was never granted peace. No, the stories say he was cursed, doomed to forever drive a black hearse drawn by horses, not just any old stallions. These are headless horses, racing through the night. And if that's not scary enough to make you wet your pants, maybe the pack of chattering goblins and baying devil hounds are. Those who have walked the grounds of Buckland Abbey after dark speak of hearing the rumble of carriage wheels on empty roads, the snap of ghostly reins, the shriek of hounds whose cries can kill any living dog that hears them. And if you dare to linger, you might just get a peek of that ominous black hearse surging through the mist, with Sir Francis Drake himself at the reins, his face pale as bone, his eyes burning with eternal fury. Sounds pretty scary to me. But perhaps the most unsettling element of this spooky local legend is Drake's drum. This is his most prized possession, carried on every expedition and returned to Buckland Abbey after his death. It's said that the drum holds Drake's spirit, and when England faces its darkest hours, the drum starts beating on its own, summoning his ghostly apparition back from the grave. They say it beat during the Napoleonic Wars. They even say it beat during both World Wars. And they say, when the time comes again, Drake's drum will summon his ghost to defend his homeland once more. Even now, visitors to the Abbey walk its ancient halls with a mixture of awe and dread, wondering if they'll hear the faint tap of the drum, or worse, find themselves face to face with the cursed knight himself, thundering towards them out of the darkness. Whether you believe in Drake's ghost, ghastly goblins, and devilish hellhounds, one thing is certain. Buckland Abbey remains a place where history and myth are entwined, where every beat of a drum or creak of a floorboard might just be a foretelling of ominous doom. So if you ever find yourself in Dartmoor after nightfall, listen carefully, because you might just hear the beat of that distant drum, or the thunder of hooves closing in fast behind you. And if you're unlucky, you might come face to face with the entity of Sir Francis Drake himself. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is Buckland Abbey really haunted by the phantom of Sir Francis Drake? Have you had any spooky encounters at the Abbey? I'd love to hear your stories. Behind the modern streets of Derby, England, lies a chilling piece of history. a place where pain, punishment and death once echoed through its stone walls. This is Derby Jail. Built in the 18th century, Derby Jail was once one of several grim holding facilities in the area. Back then, the justice system was just brutal. Even the smallest crimes could land you behind bars, or worse. Petty theft, you could be hanged. Find yourself in debt, expect to rot in a cold, damp cell for years. This wasn't just a jail. It was a place of torment and final farewells. But it's not just the dark history that draws people to Derby Jail today. It's the paranormal activity. After closing in the 1800s, Derby Jail faded into obscurity until it was partially restored in the 1990s by paranormal investigator Richard Felix. And that's when the hauntings really started to come to light. Visitors began reporting cold spots, disembodied voices, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Some even claimed to see shadowy figures lurking in the corners, especially near the condemned cell, where prisoners spent their final nights before walking to the gallows. One of the most notorious spirits believed to haunt Derby Jail is that of Richard Thorley, a murderer hanged just outside the prison. Witnesses have seen his apparition pacing the corridor, restless and angry. Others speak of a heavy male presence in one of the cells, known to lash out at visitors with scratches and sudden bursts of energy. And it doesn't end there. Paranormal investigators have captured EVPs, sudden temperature drops and unexplainable knocks and footsteps. Some say the very walls of Derby Jail are soaked with centuries of pain, and that energy doesn't just fade, it lingers. What makes Derby Jail even more terrifying is its location. Derby has often been called one of the most haunted cities in the UK, and this old jail sits right in the heart of it. It's not just a haunted building, it's part of a haunted landscape. Today, Derby Jail is open to the public. You can walk through the dark, cramped cells, see instruments of punishment still on display, and, if you're brave enough, join one of the overnight ghost hunts. But be warned, many visitors leave with more than they bargained for. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is for sure. Derby Jail is a place where history and horror are locked together in a cell that will never truly be closed. Tucked beneath the limestone cliffs of the Derbyshire Dales, the village of Stony Middleton wears a quiet face. One of winding roads, forgotten cottages, and the quiet hum of cars passing by on the nearby A263. It is, to most, a place simply passed through. But look closer, and the silence begins to shift and whisper. Because beneath the stillness, Stony Middleton harbours secrets, dark, tangled, and soaked in centuries of tragedy. Long overshadowed by its infamous neighbour, Eyam, the Plague Village, Stony Middleton has its own chilling secrets to tell, and none more disturbing than that of the murdered Scottish peddler. It was during the festive chaos of Eyam's Wakes Week, when laughter spilled from doorways and coins passed from hand to hand, that a lone trader from Scotland made his usual rounds. But this year, the air had soured. Accusing others of selling without permits, he drew the wrath of rival merchants. Though the constable acted, shutting down the illegal stalls, the damage had been done. Resentment simmered and turned to hate. Warned of danger, the peddler was escorted to Stony Middleton to lodge at the Moon Inn. But fate had other plans. That night, the vengeance he'd earned followed him through the dark dale. In the dead of night, behind the closed doors of the inn, he was murdered, A crime so brutal that even the landlord, it said, looked the other way. His killers dragged the body to Coleswalk Cavern, deep in the cliffs between the villages, and left it to rot in the dark. The corpse lay undisturbed for 20 years, until heavy floods churned through the cave, and something grotesque floated free. A foot, still encased in a shoe with a silver buckle. That buckle would be the key to identifying the long-lost peddler. But even in death, his suffering did not end. Locals claimed his restless ghost roamed the cavern mouth, frightening horses and chilling the blood of those who dared pass. Others swore they saw him inside the Moon Inn, though the ghost now walks the modern pub built across the street long after his death. Perhaps, they say, he took the transfer of the license literally, following his name rather than his bones. But murder isn't the only sorrow carved into these hills. Not far from the cavern, the cliffs bear the name Lover's Leap, where in 1762 a woman named Hannah Baddeley, grief-stricken after losing her lover, climbed to the edge in silence and threw herself into the abyss. Her skirts caught on the crags and branches, tearing as she tumbled down, but slowing her fall. By some miracle, Hannah survived. Some say she walked away barely scratched, others that she lay broken but alive. The truth is clouded by time, but the tale agrees on one detail. Hannah never loved again. Her leap had shocked the heartache out of her. She died unmarried just 2 years later. A weathered plaque near the base of the cliff still tells her story, though few stop to read it. Today, Stony Middleton sits quiet again. But if you stand beneath the cliffs at dusk, the wind seems to carry more than just cold air. It carries voices. So what do you think? Is Stony Middleton just another sleepy village in the Derbyshire Dales? Or is it a place where the dead still walk among the living? From phantom peddlers and hidden corpses to ghostly apparitions leaping from Lover's Leap, this village hides a chilling past beneath its quiet charm. Are the spirits of the wronged and heartbroken still lingering in the shadows? Or are these just legends born from the misty hills and moonlit lanes? Let us know what you believe in the comments. Have you experienced anything strange in Stony Middleton? Nestled in the rolling countryside of Lancashire, England, lies a hill with a chilling past. Pendle Hill. Today, it might look like just another peaceful patch of English landscape, but don't let its calm exterior fool you. This hill holds centuries of fear, superstition, and some of the most infamous witch trials in British history. Let's go back to the year 1612, a time when accusations of witchcraft often meant death, and fear of the devil ran rampant across the land. In the shadows of Pendle Hill, two families, the Devises and the Chattoxes, were known as healers, herbalists, even wise women. But when a travelling merchant fell mysteriously ill after an encounter with Alison Devis, the floodgates opened. One accusation led to another. Neighbours turned on neighbours. Even children were used as witnesses. In total, 12 people were accused of witchcraft. 10 of them would be hanged at Lancaster Castle after being charged with everything from causing death through sorcery to making pacts with the devil himself. What makes the Pendle witch trial stand out, even now, is how detailed the records are. It's one of the best documented witch trials of the 17th century, and it's often called Britain's answer to Salem. But here's where things get really eerie. Even after 400 years, Pendle Hill still hasn't shaken off its dark reputation. Locals, hikers, and ghost hunters all report strange phenomena in the area. Phantom footsteps, disembodied voices, and shadowy figures spotted moving through the mist. The site of the trials, Lancaster Castle, is said to be haunted by the spirits of the condemned. Paranormal investigators have picked up unexplained EVPs, temperature drops, and even screams from empty cells. And Pendle Hill itself, some say the air changes when you climb it, becomes heavier, colder. There's a sense you're not alone. Some visitors claim to hear whispers in the wind, while others report being overcome with dread or emotion. Today, Pendle embraces its haunted legacy. You'll find witch-themed trails, museums, and even ghost walks drawing thousands of curious visitors every year. But be warned, this isn't just a tourist tale. The shadows of the past are very much alive here. So, if you ever find yourself in Lancashire, staring up at that misty hill, just remember, you're standing on ground where fear once ruled, and some say, still does. If you enjoyed this dive into the dark history of Pendle Hill, hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you don't miss the next creepy episode. And let us know in the comments, would you visit Pendle Hill at night? Perched on the ragged edge of Cornwall's coast, Zena is more than just a village. It's a place caught between two worlds, where wind howls over craggy cliffs and the Atlantic crashes against ancient rock. The veil between past and present becomes perilously thin. This timeless hamlet, isolated and weather-worn, is soaked in tales of piracy, witchcraft, and things far stranger still. At the heart of this spectral enclave stands the Tinner's Arms, a 13th century inn whose low ceilings and soot-darkened beams have absorbed centuries of whispered secrets and unspoken dread. By daylight, it offers weary travellers warmth and ale, but by nightfall, it becomes something else entirely. A liminal space where the living and the dead share the same hearth. Those who linger after dark speak of figures drifting silently across the room, never speaking, never seen directly, only caught from the corner of the eye. Footsteps echo across the old wooden floorboards, heard clearly when no one else walks them. A sudden biting cold often sweeps through the bar, leaving patrons clutching their coats, even when the fire roars. Many believe these are the spirits of long-dead miners and smugglers, bound to the inn by unfinished business or buried secrets beneath the stone foundations. Some say they return not to haunt, but to watch, to remember, to exist for just a moment longer in the places they once called home. Yet, the Tinner's Arms is merely the beginning. A short walk from the pub lies St Sonara's Church, where legend whispers of the Zena mermaid. A haunting tale of a strange, beautiful woman who lured a young man into the sea, never to be seen again. Her stone-carved likeness, watching eternally from a church pew, offers no comfort, only questions. They say she first came on the wind. No one noticed her at first, just a stranger, hooded and graceful, slipping quietly into St Sonara's Church. Her eyes flicked towards the sea-facing window, then settled on the choir. On him, Matthew Travella. His voice, pure and haunting, rose like incense into the stone arches above. It was his singing that called her from the deeps, a sound so unearthly, so full of yearning that even the cold tides paused to listen. She came again the next day, and the next, always at twilight, when the shadows grow long and the sea mists coil through the lanes of Zena. Nobody knew her name. Her gown shimmered like moonlight on water, and she walked strangely, as if unaccustomed to land. But she never spoke, only watched him, eyes wide with longing and something darker. Over time, whispers crept through the village that she never aged, that her footprints never held shape in the mud, that the air grew damp and briny wherever she stood. But Matthew saw only beauty, a mystery cloaked in salt and silk. The night she spoke to him, the tide was high and the wind still. Nobody heard what she said, only that Matthew followed her, out of the church, out of the village, down to the Pendle Cove, where the cliffs fall sheer and the waves gnash at the rocks below. Matthew was never seen again. Some say she sang to him beneath the waves, others that he went willingly, spellbound, unable to resist her touch. All that remained was the echo of his voice, caught in the stone and sea spray of Zena's haunted coast. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, fishermen anchored off Pendle Cove heard a sound beneath their boat, a woman's cry, angry, pleading. She spoke of an anchor, a chain, something keeping her from her husband and their children. The men pulled their lines in and left the cove in silence, the surface of the sea now still as glass. If you visit St. Sonara's church, you'll find her still, carved into the pew of a centuries-old bench. For those who sing too sweetly or listen too long, the sea is always listening, and she is still down there, waiting. What do you think? Is Zena truly haunted, or is it just a place where folklore and history intertwine in eerie harmony? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hidden in the quiet countryside of Somerset, England, lies a place with a dark and chilling past. HMP Shepton Mallet, one of the oldest prisons in the UK. From its opening in 1610 to its final closure in 2013, this foreboding fortress has seen over 400 years of executions, despair and death. And some say those who perished never truly left. Originally built to house just 50 prisoners, Shepton Mallet quickly became overcrowded, grim and brutal. During its early years, inmates endured horrific conditions. Disease was rampant, cells were tiny, and punishments were severe. It wasn't just a place of confinement, but a site of public executions and torture. But the prison's darkest chapter came during World War II, when it was taken over by the British Army and later used by the Americans. This is where the walls absorbed unspeakable pain. It became the site of multiple military executions, including hangings and even firing squads. Between 1942 and 1945, 18 American servicemen were executed within these stone walls, some for murder, others for SA. Many of their bodies were buried in unmarked graves, and it's said their souls still linger in the shadows. Over the centuries, countless inmates died behind those cold limestone walls, whether from disease, violence, or the hangman's noose. And according to former guards, staff and paranormal investigators, something remains. Paranormal activity at Shepton Mallet is well documented and deeply unsettling. Visitors report the sound of disembodied footsteps echoing through empty cell blocks, distant whispers, slamming doors, and the eerie feeling of being watched. Some have even claimed to see full-bodied apparitions, shadowy figures standing silently at the end of dark corridors, only to vanish into thin air. One of the most active areas is A Wing, where death row inmates were once held. The atmosphere here is heavy. Many report cold spots, unexplained banging, and sudden, overwhelming feelings of dread. Others say the execution chamber itself is haunted, that if you stand too long inside, you may feel an invisible force brushing past, or hear the faint creak of a rope swaying from the gallows. Even seasoned ghost hunters have left the prison shaken. Teams using spirit boxes and EMF detectors often pick up strange voices and inexplicable readings. One investigator reported being scratched across the back in an empty corridor. Another claimed to have seen a man in prison uniform staring at them through the bars of a locked cell. Today, HMP Shepton Mallet stands as a preserved monument to its haunted legacy. No longer a working prison, it's now open for tours, history walks, and for the brave paranormal investigations after dark. But if you do visit, be warned. Many who visit say they bring back more than just memories with them. Because at Shepton Mallet, the walls don't just remember the past, they whisper it. If you enjoyed this dive into Shepton Mallet's haunted history, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for a feast of grim and grisly content. And tell us, would you dare to spend the night alone inside? Let us know in the comments section down below. The haunting sound of a church organ playing on its own at night. The terrifying sight of ghostly figures drifting between pews. And the chilling apparition of a woman in a nearby river. This is no ordinary parish church. This is the haunting of the Holy Trinity Church. Dating back to the 13th century, Holy Trinity is world famous as the final resting place of William Shakespeare. Visitors travel from every corner of the globe to stand beside his grave, but some say he never truly left. In the quiet of the chancel, where Shakespeare lies beneath the stone floor, a ghostly figure is often seen. Translucent, male, alone. He stands in silence, sometimes moving his hand as if writing in the air, deep in thought. Those who witness it say it looks just like him, the bard himself, trapped in the echo of unfinished words. And then there are the whispers, snippets of Shakespearean verse, spoken where no one else is there, heard by ears that can't quite believe it. Lines from Hamlet, Macbeth, The Tempest, recited in a voice too soft to place, too real to deny. But the most heart-wrenching presence is that of a woman. She's been seen wandering the churchyard at dusk, clothed in Tudor-era dress, her steps hesitant, her gaze distant. Locals believe it's Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's very own wife, forever searching for her lost husband, drawn back to the place where he was laid to rest. Inside the church, strange things are said to happen. Sudden cold spots grip visitors like a vice, especially near the altar. Some say it feels like somebody is watching, standing just behind them. The organ, long silent at night, has played on its own, soft, sorrowful tones echoing through the darkness, only to fall silent when someone comes to check. Nobody is ever there. The keys never even move. Figures have been seen drifting between the pews. People try to approach them, but the shadows simply vanish. melting into the air like smoke. Some who snap photos capture orbs, strange lights, or even pale faces hovering behind them in the frame. Nothing they saw in the moment, only when they look later. But perhaps the most chilling story tied to Holy Trinity isn't from centuries past. It happened in 1954. A woman named Olive had gone out for the evening and never came home. Days later, her body was found in the River Avon, just steps from the church. A woolen scarf had been tied around her neck and secured to a heavy tombstone, one stolen from the graveyard and dragged into the water to keep her down. Her tragic murder was never solved. Since then, she's been seen, pale and still, standing waist deep in the river near the church, her soaked scarf twisted tight around her neck, eyes open, watching. This place is full of memory. Holy Trinity is more than just Shakespeare's resting place. It's a crossroads of history, tragedy, and something entirely unexplainable. The church holds its beauty in the daylight, but when the sun sets and the mist creeps over the river, that beauty turns cold. So if you visit, be respectful. Watch the pews. Listen for the whispers. And whatever you do, if you hear someone behind you reciting a line of poetry, don't turn around. Beneath the quiet countryside of West Wickham, Buckinghamshire, lies a chilling network of tunnels shrouded in darkness, mystery, and legend. These are the Hellfire Caves, a place where secret societies once gathered. Whispers of the occult echoed through the stone corridors, and where shadows may still hold secrets that have never seen the light of day. Let's dive into the eerie history and hauntings of one of England's most mysterious underground locations. The Hellfire Caves were commissioned in the mid-1700s by Sir Francis Dashwood, founder of the notorious Hellfire Club. At first glance, the caves had a practical purpose. They were dug by local workers to mine chalk and flint, materials used to repair a nearby road. But that was just the surface story. Once complete, these winding passageways became the meeting place for Dashwood's secret society, the Order of the Knights of St. Francis of Wickham, better known as the Hellfire Club. This elite group included influential politicians, writers, and aristocrats. And what they did down there? That's where things get strange. The Hellfire Club was infamous for its debauchery, mock religious ceremonies, and rumoured occult practices. Meetings were shrouded in secrecy, filled with heavy drinking, hedonism, and possibly even satanic rituals. Some say members would don robes, hold black masses, and summon forces they couldn't control. The caves themselves are symbolic, twisting deeper into the earth. The tunnels mimic a descent into the underworld. At the very end lies the so-called Inner Temple, an eerie chamber located directly beneath St. Lawrence's Church and its Golden Ball Tower. Coincidence, or a deliberate design to create a connection between heaven and hell? It's no surprise that the Hellfire Caves are said to be haunted. Over the centuries, visitors and staff alike have reported chilling experiences. Whispers in the darkness, footsteps echoing from empty tunnels, sudden drops in temperature, and the feeling of being watched. One of the most famous spirits said to haunt the caves is Suki, a servant girl allegedly lured into the tunnels by men who intended to humiliate her. Her body was later found in the caves, and many believe her restless spirit still roams the tunnels, seeking justice or revenge. Others claim to have seen dark figures vanishing into the walls, or glowing orbs floating down the passages. Paranormal investigators have even caught unexplained voices on audio and strange anomalies on camera. Today, the Hellfire Caves are open to the public, offering tours that blend fascinating history with eerie atmosphere. But many believe the energy left behind from centuries of rituals and debauchery still lingers in the air. Whether you're a history buff, a paranormal enthusiast, or just someone looking for a spooky adventure, the Hellfire Caves are a place where the past never quite stays buried, and the deeper you go, the darker it gets. So, would you dare walk the tunnels of the Hellfire Caves? Would you spend the night beneath the earth, where the echoes of the Hellfire Club still whisper through the shadows? Let me know in the comments what you think. Is it just history and myth, or something much more sinister? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more dark tales from haunted Britain. Residents of Nottingham whisper about the chilling legends tied to George's Hill and George's Lane, tucked quietly away in the village of Calverton. For generations, locals whispered of ghostly figures, strange apparitions, and an oppressive atmosphere that clings to the road like fog on a winter's night. It wasn't until recent years that late-night dives into local forums and folklore threads that the sheer volume of reports began to reveal themselves. Again and again, George's Lane appeared, threaded through decades of sightings, strange experiences, and unexplained terror. The stories were countless, stretching back through time like the dark lane itself, and always eerily consistent. The area had become something of a legend in its own right. And yet, unlike the infamous Stocksbridge bypass in Sheffield, a road cemented in ghost lore thanks to its feature on an episode of Strange But True, George's Lane has remained largely in the shadows, its unsettling fame growing quietly, whispered among those who knew. But that anonymity is beginning to fade. In a thrilling turn, Calverton Village finally claimed its moment in the spotlight. This year, it was featured in the chilling television series Help, My House is Haunted. A long overdue recognition of the area's ghostly reputation. But George's Lane is far from the only spectral tale the village holds. With its ancient roots and centuries-old buildings, Calverton is steeped in history and mystery. Stories of restless spirits, haunted homes, and eerie encounters echo through its narrow streets. It's no surprise that many now call Calverton one of the most haunted villages in the UK. And few places wear their ghostly heritage as proudly as this village does, where the past isn't just remembered, but felt. The folk museum murmurs with whispers of the old days, and the village pub creaks with stories best shared over a strong drink. But it's George's Hill that carries the weight of the village's darkest legend, and the reason some locals won't dare drive that road after nightfall. Ask any seasoned taxi driver, and they'll tell you the same thing. Avoid George's Hill after dark. If they must enter the village, they'll come through Woodborough instead. Further, but safer. Because up on that winding stretch of road, where the trees grow dense and shadows stretch long, something waits. The phantom of George's Hill. Always in black, always watching. One man described the figure with shaking hands. Tall and gaunt, cloaked in shadows, with a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over a hooked nose. Around its neck hung a heavy silver chain that caught the moonlight as it stepped from the hedgerow. At first, the witnesses ran, but the figure glided silently behind him, never breaking pace, never falling back, just following. He collapsed through his front door, heart racing. He fell ill for days afterwards, though no doctor could say why. Another time, a woman driving alone felt a sudden chill. Glancing into her rearview mirror, she saw him, seated in the back seat, silent, watching her. Black hat, no expression, no movement. Then, in the blink of an eye, gone. The car swerved violently as she screamed, narrowly avoiding the ditch. The figure doesn't always appear in full. A young couple reported that as they crested George's Hill one night, they saw a pair of disembodied legs, clad in old riding breeches, sprint across the road. Just the legs. Nothing more. No sound of feet on tarmac. No upper body. Just the impossible. And still, George's Hill waits. No one knows who the phantom is. Some whisper he was a rider thrown from his horse long ago. Others speak of a highwayman executed nearby, his silver chain once an ill-gotten prize. But what's certain is this: those who have seen him never forget, and those who haven't, they drive the long way around. So is Calverton just another quiet English village, or something far more sinister? With tales of shadowy figures on George's Hill, phantom footsteps, and spirits that seem to follow you home, it's clear that something strange lingers here, something that refuses to be forgotten. But what do you think? Are these just local legends passed down through generations, or have the residents of Calverton truly been brushing shoulders with the other side? Let us know in the comments if you've ever experienced anything strange in Calverton, or if you dare to visit after dark. An abandoned church, black magic rituals, a cursed priest and restless souls. Welcome to Clop Hill, where hooded figures move between gravestones and footsteps are often heard in empty rooms. This is the haunting of St Mary's Church. Mention the village of Clop Hill to anyone in Bedfordshire or Hertfordshire, and you'll see a knowing, uneasy smile. Not because of the quaint cottages or rolling hills, no. Clop Hill is famous for something far darker. Perched on a lonely hill overlooking the village stands the ruins of St Mary the Virgin Church, a building that hasn't simply been abandoned, it's been forsaken. Its decline began slowly. In the 1840s, the congregation moved to a new church in the village, and by the 1950s, the old St Mary's was little more than a crumbling shell. Then, during the harsh winter of 1962 and 1963, one of the coldest winters on record, something happened that would change Clop Hill forever. In March 1963, under a heavy blanket of snow, a group of individuals made their way across frozen fields to the abandoned church. What they performed that night was no childish prank. It was an act of necromancy. They broke open the grave of Jenny Humberstone, a young woman who had been dead for nearly 2 centuries. Her skull was impaled on a spike. Her bones were arranged in a chilling circular pattern around a makeshift stone altar. Symbols, some ancient, some invented, were scrawled on the walls. A cockerel was sacrificed, its blood spilled into the snow. The scene was discovered by 2 local boys the following day, and what they saw would haunt the village for generations. Newspapers branded it a black mass, and Clop Hill became a national sensation almost overnight. Occultists, thrill seekers, and ghost hunters swarmed to the site, drawn by the lure of darkness. But for Reverend Lewis Barker, the village rector, the horror was only just beginning. Barker, a deeply religious and sensitive man, felt that the very land had been tainted. Shortly after the desecration, he suffered personal tragedy. His young daughter was struck and killed by a car in nearby Shefford. His health began to deteriorate rapidly, and he became convinced that dark forces were stalking him. He tried to rebury Jenny Humberstone's bones multiple times, but each attempt was sabotaged. Desecrations continued, symbols reappeared, graves were disturbed again and again. In desperation, Barker hid the bones away, locking them in the boot of his car, hoping to sever whatever connections had been made. But this didn't work. On Halloween of 1969, Barker fled Cophill Rectory in fear, retreating to an isolated cottage near Hitchin. For a while, he felt safe. Until, one icy December morning, he woke to find ceremonial stones and buried effigies outside his door. A message, clear and terrifying: "You cannot escape us." He confessed to friends living with him that the witches were still after him, and that he still possessed the bones that had cursed him. Imagine living with the knowledge that somewhere, someone, or something was watching you, waiting. Even decades later, stories of strange sightings continue to swirl around Clophill's old church. Visitors report hooded figures moving between the gravestones, a monstrous towering shadow that stalks the ruins, disembodied whispers calling out from the darkness, and footsteps crunching on gravel when nobody is there. Even police officers assigned to watch the site at night have refused to laugh off these tales, many claiming to have had chilling experiences of their own. Some say the hauntings are the result of decades of fear and imagination. Others believe something was truly unleashed that night in 1963. Something that never left. Built in 1750, high on the wind-swept moors of Cornwall, stands a lonely, time-worn building cloaked in legend and shadow. This remote coaching inn was never just a place to rest your head. It was a haven for smugglers, wreckers, and whispers of death. This is the Jamaica Inn. Set deep within the Bodmin Moor, a place already steeped in eerie folklore, Jamaica Inn quickly became a den of criminal activity. But what unfolded within its stone walls would stain it with something much darker, something that still lingers in the night. Smuggling was rampant across the Cornish coast in the 18th and 19th centuries. Goods like brandy, tobacco and tea were brought ashore under cover of darkness, often salvaged from ships that had been lured to their doom by false beacon lights. These ships would crash upon the docks, their crew left to drown or be murdered on the shores, and the cargo would be carted away to hideouts like the Jamaica Inn. It's said that the screams of drowning sailors still echo across the moors, carried on the cold wind to the inn's doorstep. And inside, the ghosts remain. Over the centuries, countless guests have reported the unexplainable. Footsteps pacing empty corridors, doors that slam of their own accord, and the feeling of being watched by an unseen presence. But one ghost is seen more than any other. A phantom man in a tricorn hat and a long cloak, standing silently in the courtyard before vanishing into thin air. According to legend, he was a smuggler, murdered in the dead of night after stepping outside for a moment of fresh air. His killer was never caught. To this day, his spirit is said to roam the grounds, searching for justice, or perhaps revenge. Room 5 is where the air turns coldest. Visitors have awoken to the sensation of being pinned to the bed, unable to move, with the crushing weight pressing down on their chest. Others have seen shadowy figures often drifting across the room, disappearing through solid walls. Even the pub itself isn't safe. Patrons have heard muffled conversations in Cornish dialects from empty corners, seen glasses slide off tables, and caught glimpses of spectral figures in the mirror behind the bar. In 1936, author Daphne du Maurier stayed at the inn. Her experience was so unsettling, so atmospheric, that it inspired her to write the Gothic novel Jamaica Inn, a tale of crime, betrayal, and ghostly secrets, forever tying the inn to the world of supernatural fiction. But fiction has nothing on the real thing. To this day, the Jamaica Inn remains open to guests, to thrill seekers, and, it seems, to spirits. Paranormal investigators, psychics, and skeptics have all tried to explain the strange happenings. None have succeeded. So, if you ever find yourself driving across the lonely Bodmin moors and the fog starts to roll in thick and fast, you may hear the creak of an old sign swaying in the wind and feel an icy chill crawl up your spine, because the ghosts of Cornwall's dark past don't rest easy, and at the Jamaica Inn, they're still watching. Locals speak in hushed tones of ghostly soldiers seen marching through living rooms, of a black dog that materialises silently on the ancient castle ramparts, and of a well-dressed gentleman whose piercing eyes follow you as you walk. Sightings like these don't come from a single crumbling building or abandoned inn. They come from everywhere. By day, Tutbury is a picturesque English village, its cobbled streets and historic buildings basking in the glowing sunlight of the countryside. But when the sun disappears behind the rolling hills and the mist creeps in from the fields, something else stirs. A much darker presence. Whispers drift through alleyways, shadows shift behind walls, and footsteps echo in the dead of night. Footsteps that belong to no living soul. One of the most spine-chilling tales comes from Lauren Bagnall, who once worked at the Dog and Partridge pub and hotel. Between 2013 and 2017, she encountered the infamous Grey Lady. Alone, in the quiet hours of the morning, she'd unlock the doors only to glimpse a shadow gliding past her into a room where nothing and no one waited. Static would erupt from silent televisions, invisible hands moved objects, and sometimes she would hear children laughing in empty meeting rooms. But it was the converted flat behind the pub that terrified her the most. Once a coal store, the space harboured something far more sinister. Whatever was in the hotel was playful, Lauren said. But in that flat, it was malicious. With no windows and thick darkness, she often slept with every light on, only to have plugs ripped from sockets and kitchen appliances found relocated into rooms they'd never been in before. Her friend, George Williamson, experienced horrors of his own in a house on Bridge Street. In one chilling incident, Lauren called him, screaming, after the loft hatch crashed to the ground without warning. George himself had seen a man in a beige suit, whose head stayed still, but whose eyes followed him across the room. Sometimes something unseen would climb on top of him in the night, or grasp his hand while he slept. And once, he watched in shock as a glowing orb of white light emerged from a wall and floated calmly into the neighbouring house. The hauntings go beyond homes and pubs. Tutbury Castle, rich with blood-soaked history, is said to be the source of phantom soldiers still fighting battles long lost to time. Ellen Smith, who's led ghost walks through the village since 2007, has heard the stories. The thunder of hooves, the creak of wooden wheels on cobblestones in the early hours, as if the Red Rover coach still rolls through from a century long gone. Even animals sense what humans try to deny. Lauren's grandmother once watched her bold, unshakable dog flee from a silent, motionless black hound that loomed atop the castle ruins. And down on Monk Street, in a haunted paper shop, a woman in spectral white walked through the store and vanished into a solid wall, while her dog trembled outside. And then there's the florist's shop on High Street. Tina Adams, who worked there for 2 decades, watched her son flee after keys launched from a door and struck him in the back. Even burly tradesmen bought in for simple jobs refused to return after a single night. Whatever lingered above that shop, it wasn't just a memory, it was alive. So alive, the place needed an exorcism. From rattling lofts to shadow figures with trilby hats, from Victorian children laughing in locked rooms to hands reaching from the dark, Tutbury does not forget its dead. And its dead, it seems, have not yet moved on. So, what do you believe? Is Tutbury simply a picturesque village with a colourful past? Or is it one of the most haunted places in England, where history and the paranormal walk side by side? Have you ever experienced something strange in Tutbury or anywhere else in Staffordshire? Drop your story or your thoughts down in the comments. Nestled in Nottingham's Lace District Market, the National Justice Museum stands as a testament to centuries of legal history and human drama. Housed within the formidable walls of the former Shire Hall and County Jail, this Grade 2 listed building has borne witness to a myriad of judicial proceedings, incarcerations and executions, making it a focal point for both history enthusiasts and seekers of the paranormal. The origins of this storied site trace back to at least 1375, with records indicating its use as a court of law. By 1449, it had expanded to include a prison, solidifying its role in the administration of justice. Over the centuries, the complex evolved, encompassing Victorian courtrooms, Georgian jails, and ancient cells, each echoing with the tales of those who passed through. Public executions were a grim reality here, with the last occurring in 1864, marking the end of a dark chapter in its history. Given its extensive and often sombre past, it's little wonder that the National Justice Museum has garnered a reputation for being one of the UK's most haunted locations. Visitors and staff alike have reported unsettling experiences, from sudden feelings of nausea and unease, to sightings of shadowy figures and unexplained noises. Particularly notorious are the subterranean areas. Deep within the museum is an area known as the Pits. This area evokes a palpable sense of dread. Reports include sensations of sickness, the feeling of being touched, and the sound of disembodied footsteps. Dark apparitions have also been sighted, adding to its ominous reputation. However, the area considered to be the epicentre of paranormal activity is down in the caves. This section has been the site of poltergeist phenomena. Objects are known to move inexplicably, with crosses being thrown and loud, unaccounted for noises echoing through the chambers. Visitors have recounted being touched by unseen hands and witnessing stones being hurled without discernible cause. Costumed characters bring historical narratives to life, guiding visitors through authentic spaces like the Victorian courtroom and the ancient cells. Special events such as after-hours ghost tours invite the curious to delve into the museum's spectral side, offering a chance to perhaps encounter the lingering spirits firsthand. Whether drawn by its rich historical tapestry or the allure of the unknown, the National Justice Museum stands as a monument to justice's multifaceted story, inviting all who enter to explore its depths and perhaps uncover the secrets that refuse to stay buried. Tucked away in the cobbled heart of Bristol lies a building with more ghosts than guests. A place where shadows linger and footsteps echo long after the living have gone. This is the Llandodja Tro, and its walls are soaked with stories that chill to the bone. Built in 1664, the Llandodja Tro is one of Bristol's oldest and most haunted pubs. Its black timber-framed exterior leans slightly, as if weighed down by centuries of secrets. Inside, narrow corridors and warped floors whisper of a time long past, a time when sailors, smugglers, and scoundrels roamed the port city, and death was just a heartbeat away. The name Llandodja Tro itself is a nod to its maritime past. A tro was a flat-bottomed boat that ferried cargo between Wales and England. The pub is said to have been founded by a retired sailor from the Welsh village of Llandodja, and from the very beginning, the sea wasn't the only thing following him inland. Legend has it the pub became a haven for more than just thirsty travellers. Beneath its floors and behind its walls, secrets festered. Some say that Llandodja was a meeting point for pirates. Others whisper of hidden tunnels stretching from the cellar all the way to the harbour, perfect for smuggling both goods and bodies. But the most enduring tales are those of the dead who never left. The most chilling ghost said to haunt Llandodja Tro is that of a crippled young boy, seen hobbling across the upper floors, dragging his twisted foot behind him. No one knows exactly who he is, or how he died, but staff and guests alike have reported hearing his uneven footsteps above them, even when the rooms were empty. Glasses have been known to slide off tables on their own. Doors slam violently, with no breeze. Some visitors claim to have been pushed on the stairs. Others to have felt a cold, unseen hand wrap around their wrist in the dark. Perhaps even stranger is the sheer number of ghosts said to reside here. According to paranormal investigators, the Llandodja Tro is home to at least 15 restless spirits. Some whisper, some scream, and some simply watch from the shadows. In one infamous encounter, a bartender locking up late at night turned to see a man dressed in 18th century naval garb standing at the end of the bar, only for him to vanish into thin air when approached. Another guest reported hearing a low growl in their ear, despite being completely alone. But the stories don't end there. The Llandodja Tro's haunted reputation is so notorious, in fact, that it's believed to have inspired parts of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, and even played host to Daniel Defoe, who may have heard the very whispers that inspired Robinson Crusoe. Even in silence, the Llandodja Tro breathes, waiting, watching, remembering. So, if you ever walk down King Street late at night and feel a chill creep up your spine, don't be so quick to dismiss it. you might just be passing one of the most haunted buildings in all of England. The ghost of a servant girl, a wicked lord, and a pregnant bride. Prepare for a story of tragedy and betrayal. Welcome to Annesley. This is the haunting of Annesley Old Church and Hall. Somewhere off the beaten path in Nottinghamshire lies a ruin very few people talk about, a forgotten place where ivy claws at ancient stone and the silence is palpable. Fires, duels, heartbreak, and the dead who simply refuse to leave. At first glance, it's just a crumbling shell on a grassy mound, surrounded by wind-blown trees and the wildflowers of a long-forgotten graveyard. But if you linger here after dark, if you dare walk those crooked rows of moss-covered headstones, you'll soon understand why locals don't visit this place alone. The church was built back in 1356 by the powerful Annesley family, but before that, a Norman church stood on the same spot. Today, the building itself is in ruins, but the energy here is anything but gone. The graveyard is the resting place of plague victims, and perhaps not all of them are truly at rest. There have been sightings of a dark figure, a monk dressed in dense black robes, silently passing between the stones. Now, the thing is, no monastery ever stood here, but there were practicing monks at Newstead Abbey just down the road. So maybe our spectral friend could be making his way from there, centuries later. Who knows? Annesley Hall looms just beyond the churchyard, partially hidden by trees. It's private property now, abandoned, ravaged by fire, and empty. Well, in the physical sense, at least. Built in the 13th century, this once grand manor passed from the Annesleys to the Chorworths when heiress Alice Annesley married George Chorworth in the 1400s. The Chorworth Musters family held the estate for generations, and some say they still hold claim to the property, even in death. This is the place where Lord Byron, long before the fame, used to roam as a boy. And here, on the nearby Diadem Hill, he met his first great love, Mary Chorworth. However, their love was doomed. A family feud raged after Byron's uncle, known simply as the Wicked Lord, killed a Chorworth in a duel just outside the house. After overhearing Mary confiding in a friend that she'd never marry him, Byron left, shattered and utterly heartbroken. And Mary, well, she went on to marry another man. Neither were happy, and yet their ghosts have both been seen, wandering the same ground where their tragic story began. Lovers torn apart by blood and pride, endlessly searching for what might have been. Inside the hall, the activity is chilling. The Blue Room, once Byron's bedroom, has a nasty reputation. Visitors report being pushed by invisible hands, scratched, and in some cases, even burned. In the library, unexplained cigar smoke hangs in the air. Whispers drift from empty corners, and near the fireplace, the ghost of a pregnant woman has been seen holding a baby. In the 1940s, her bones were discovered beneath the hall, dated back to the 1600s. She hadn't been buried, she'd been hidden. Mary's son, Charles Musters, also lingers here, having died of malaria while sailing with Charles Darwin. His ghost has been known to throw stones and objects at guests. And deep beneath the hall, Byron's murderous uncle, the Wicked Lord, is said to haunt the cellar, still bitter, still violent. The Mews are watched over by a servant girl who took her own life centuries ago after enduring abuse at the hands of a man. Maybe the Wicked Lord. Her shadowy figure is often seen staring out of the windows. waiting, watching, hoping he never returns. There's even a story of a woman sitting on the edge of an old well. Some say they've seen her rise up from within the well. Others, just her silhouette, still, cold, and staring. And then there's the road. A motorist once reported a shadowy figure stepping directly in front of her car. Swirling dress, but no face. On the brink of collision, the figure vanished. The driver ran red lights to escape, too terrified to stop. Paranormal investigators have explored the church and hall for years, even during its abandonment. Some whisper of witchcraft, others just call it folklore. But the energy here, the heavy, silent weight that presses on your chest, that is real. This place has a memory, a pulse, and though time has torn it down, the stories never left. So if you do visit Annesley, be quiet, be respectful, and whatever you do, don't turn your back on that well. Hidden beneath the quiet countryside of Kidderminster lies a vast and eerie underground world. One that whispers secrets of war, tragedy, and something far more unsettling. This is the story of the Drakelow Tunnels, a labyrinth of shadowy passageways steeped in history and hauntings. The Drakelow Tunnels were originally built during World War II, carved into sandstone beneath Kingsford Country Park. This massive underground facility was constructed as a shadow factory, part of a strategic plan to keep British military production alive in the event of aerial bombings. It was operated by the Rover Car Company, which produced parts for military vehicles and aircraft. In total, over 3.5 miles of tunnels were dug, vast enough to house hundreds of workers, and even a power supply, water system, and air filtration. After the war, Drakelow didn't fade into obscurity. Instead, it evolved. During the Cold War, the tunnels were repurposed as a potential nuclear bunker for regional government use. In the event of nuclear war, officials would retreat to these cold concrete halls to run the country from below ground. It's a place designed for survival, but it's what didn't survive that may still linger today. As the years passed and the facility was eventually decommissioned, Drakelow Tunnels began attracting attention for a different reason altogether: paranormal activity. Visitors, ghost hunters, and even paranormal investigators have reported disturbing phenomena within the tunnels. Strange echoes, footsteps where no one walks, the feeling of being watched, and sudden drops in temperature, even when deep underground and far from the outside world. Some have seen shadow figures darting through the darkness, while others claim to have heard whispering voices echoing through the corridors. One of the most commonly reported apparitions is that of a man believed to have died during the construction of the tunnels, crushed by a falling rock. His ghost is said to still roam the hallways, sometimes appearing as a misty figure or as a heavy presence that causes equipment to fail or lights to flicker. Another chilling tale speaks of a restless soldier, spotted in full military uniform, silently pacing the tunnels before vanishing into the walls. Is he a remnant of Drakelow's wartime past, or something else entirely? Even experienced paranormal teams have reported extreme unease and unexplainable technical issues while investigating the site. Cameras fail, batteries drain, and EVP sessions pick up whispers that no one present heard at the time. Today, parts of the Drakelow tunnels are open for guided tours and ghost hunts for those brave enough to step inside. But be warned, many who enter leave with more questions than answers. Whether it's residual energy from decades of wartime activity or something darker buried beneath the surface, one thing is for sure. Drakelow is not just a tunnel system, it's a portal to the past, and maybe to the other side. Deep in the heart of Gloucestershire, nestled in a secluded valley near Stroud, lies a building frozen in time. A place of mystery, abandonment, and restless whispers from the past. This is the haunting of the Woodchester Mansion. At first glance, it looks like a grand Gothic revival home, with its ornate stonework and looming towers. But step closer, and the illusion begins to crack. Behind its majestic facade lies an eerie truth. The mansion was never finished. Inside, staircases lead to nowhere. Rooms open into black voids, and the air is unnaturally still. It's as if time stopped, and something else took over. Construction began in the mid-1800s, replacing an earlier Georgian house owned by the wealthy Lee family. The new owner, William Lee, a devout Catholic, envisioned a spectacular mansion built on strong spiritual principles. But strange events began to unfold. Builders walked off the job without explanation. Craftsmen refused to return. Stories of shadows moving on the scaffolding and whispers in the empty halls began to circulate. Eventually, the project was abandoned, mid-build, as if cursed. And that is where the true darkness began to fester. Locals believe Woodchester Mansion is indeed cursed, not just haunted, but alive with something ancient. Beneath the house lies a complex network of underground streams and limestone caverns long associated with supernatural activity. Some say the land was sacred long before the first stone was ever laid. Others claim it's a gateway to something that shouldn't be disturbed. Over the decades, countless visitors have reported terrifying encounters. Ghostly monks drifting through corridors, the sound of footsteps pacing the upper floors when no one else is inside, disembodied screams echoing from the chapel. Paranormal investigators have been scratched, pushed, and even choked by unseen hands. Equipment fails, batteries die, cold spots appear in rooms that should be warm. One of the most chilling tales involves the ghost of a stonemason, believed to have fallen to his death during construction. His restless spirit is said to haunt the upper levels, forever bound to the home he was helping to build. Some visitors have even seen him staring out from the tower window, where no floor exists beneath his feet. But perhaps the darkest room of all is the baptismal chamber, where ritualistic echoes still seem to linger. People report being overcome with nausea, dread, or an overwhelming urge to flee. Animals refuse to enter. Cameras stop working. It's as if the house wants to keep its secrets buried in stone and silence. Woodchester Mansion doesn't just have ghosts. It feels like a ghost. Half built, half alive. A skeleton of Victorian ambition, filled with echoes of fear. To this day, nobody fully understands why construction was halted so abruptly. No blueprints were finished, no official reason ever given. Only legends, only shadows. And if you listen closely, you might just hear them whispering. So, if you ever find yourself in the quiet woods of Gloucestershire, and you come across the dark silhouette of Woodchester Mansion, turn back, or step inside. But beware, some doors, once open, never truly close. Ghostly arsonists, apparitions watching from the pews, and whispering phantoms. This isn't just a cathedral, it's a place built on foundations of blood, betrayal, and unfinished business. This is the haunting of York Minster. Standing proud in Deangate, York, one of the most breathtaking and terrifying places in Northern Europe, this towering Gothic masterpiece was built atop a Roman fortress dating back to 71 AD. The 6th and 9th Roman legions once called this place home, and their presence still lingers in the dark beneath your feet. Today, if you descend into the Minster's undercroft, you can still see the remains of that ancient fort. Artifacts of a forgotten age whisper stories of battle and conquest. York itself later fell into Viking hands. They renamed it Jorvik and left their mark forever. One Viking lord, Ulf, even gifted the Minster a treasure, a 1,000-year-old carved elephant tusk, the horn of Ulf, still resting within these sacred walls. History hangs pretty heavy here, but so does tragedy. York Minster has been ravaged by fire again and again. 1753, 1829, 1840, and more recently, 1984. The worst of the fires all began with one man, a man called Jonathan Martin. Driven by voices he claimed were from God, though I'd say he probably did have voices in his head telling him what to do. I'm not entirely convinced it was God. Anyway, Jonathan hid inside the cathedral after dark, stripped himself bare, piled wood and holy books, and set the night ablaze. Declared mad, Jonathan escaped the gallows, but it seems that when he did eventually die, his spirit became bound to the abbey. To this day, people claim to see him, still trying to complete his fiery mission, still naked. However, Jonathan, our resident arsonist, isn't the only restless soul here. Senior clergy Dean Gale, a man much beloved in his time, died tragically young at just 26 years old in 1702. But even in death, he refuses to abandon his post. Witnesses claim to have seen his ghost, quietly listening to sermons that echo through the centuries. And then, there's the encounter that chills even the skeptics. In the 1820s, two women separated from their group wandered the silent halls of the Minster. From the shadows, a man in a naval uniform approached. As he passed, he whispered something into one woman's ear, something that chilled her to her core. Because it turns out, this ghostly apparition was indeed the woman's very own brother, her dead brother. So apparently, years before this spooky encounter, the brother and sister made a pact. The first to die would return with news of the afterlife, and it seems he had kept his promise. But no one knows what terrible truth he whispered that night. Why he chose to appear there and then isn't very clear. Maybe the Abbey was a place they frequented together often. Nobody quite knows. But one thing is for sure. York Minster stands waiting. A monument to beauty, history, and restless spirits. So, when you step inside, be respectful, and just remember, the living and the dead walk these centuries-old halls together. On the windswept plains of Salisbury, surrounded by mist and silence, lies a place lost in time, and haunted by its past. A village known as Imber, abandoned, hollow, and whispering with memories that refuse to fade. Once, Imber was a simple farming community, quiet, peaceful, alive. Now, it's nothing more than shattered windows, rotten doors, and the constant hum of something unseen, watching. They call it a ghost town, and not just because the people left. The horror began in 1943. With World War II raging across Europe, Allied forces prepared for the largest invasion the world had ever seen. But, for the villagers of Imber, another kind of war arrived, one they could never have imagined. On November 1st, military trucks rolled into town. The War Office gave the people 47 days. Just 47 days to leave their homes, their land, their history. Imber, they said, was to become a training ground for urban warfare, a stage for war, not for life. The villagers were promised they could return when the war ended. That promise was a lie. Only the church of St. Giles was spared. The rest of Imber was left to rot. Its homes became empty shells, windows black with dust, doors left ajar like open mouths mid-scream. And still, they say the villagers never left. Imber's history stretches back to the Saxon era, even appearing in the Domesday Book under the name Imembry. But by the late 1800s, things began to turn. The War Office, hungry for more land, began to quietly buy up Imber, piece by piece. The soil was barren, the farms struggling. Some sold willingly, but others were eventually pushed out. The land no longer theirs, the military now their landlord. And finally, when the village was taken completely, those final words came: leave, or be caught in the blast. It was the last thing they ever heard on their own soil. Now Imber is more than abandoned, it is haunted. Visitors speak of shadows peering from broken windows, the ghostly laughter of children, and cold breezes that carry no wind. Most chilling of all, strange graffiti appears on the walls, etched in places no human could reach, vanishing just as mysteriously. Some say the dead are trying to communicate, and two spirits are said to walk the streets more than most. Albert Nash was the village blacksmith, a man of grit and grease, warmth and kindness. When Imber was taken, something inside him broke. He left his forge in silence. 6 weeks later, Albert was dead. They say he died of a broken heart. But death was not the end for Albert. Now his workshop echoes with the clang of phantom hammers. Visitors speak of the smell of oil, the sound of footsteps, and a voice humming a sorrowful tune in the dark. He's never seen, but when something breaks, when something goes wrong, Albert is always blamed. And sometimes it feels like he's just in the next room. Then there is Major Whistler, once Imber's wealthiest man. He owned the town hall, Imber Court, its future, its fate. Now he owns its silence. Witnesses have seen him, a figure lurking in the windows, staring out as if remembering a world he once controlled. Some even say the strange graffiti is his work, his way of keeping authority in death, as he did in life. Though their homes are gone, many villagers returned after death, not to live, but to be buried in the graveyard of St Giles. And Imber, long sealed to the living, was suddenly reborn as a destination of the dead. In 2009, tour buses began to arrive. Curious thrill seekers walking the dead streets, hoping to catch a whisper or a shadow. Sometimes they get more than they bargained for. Just 18 minutes from Stonehenge lies this eerie husk of a village, a place where ghosts outnumber the living. So the next time you're walking through the Wiltshire Plains and a chill brushes your neck, ask yourself, are you alone? Or has Imber remembered you? Subscribe for more haunted history, if you dare. There's something wrong with the silence in Tavistock. It lingers too long, too heavy, as if the town is holding its breath, remembering. Among these quiet Devonshire lanes at the northern edge of Dartmoor, the past never truly rests. Behind the ivy-covered walls of Kilworthy House, within the crumbling shadows of Fitsford, and beneath the haunted stones of Tavistock Abbey, something waits. Forgotten murders, cursed bloodlines, spirits that return when the world is at its darkest. Tonight, we walk the boundary between history and horror. These are the ghosts of Tavistock. Kilworthy House. The ghost of Judge Glanville's daughter is said to stalk the halls of the old house still, her presence marked by fleeting shadows and the chilling whisper of silk on stone. Here is not a simple haunting. It is the echo of a love that defied authority and a crime that shocked a county. She was young, spirited, and deeply in love with a sailor, a match her father, the formidable Judge Glanville, forbade with iron resolve. Instead, he demanded she marry a wealthy goldsmith, a man she despised. But love, when cornered, can turn desperate. Under cover of darkness, the daughter, her lover, and their loyal servant conspired to rid themselves of the obstacle. The goldsmith was murdered, coldly, cleanly, but fate did not grant them escape. Their crime was swiftly uncovered. The trial gripped Devon in a fever of horror and fascination. But what no one could have expected was that the judge presiding over the trial, the man forced to weigh justice against blood, was her very own father. Bound by the law and the unyielding truth of the evidence, he sentenced his own daughter, her lover, and their servant to hang. Since then, strange things have plagued the site where it all unfolded. Doors slam without cause. The air thickens inexplicably. The faint rustle of a silk gown sweeps the stairwell, though no one is there. Witnesses speak of her with reverence and fear, of glimpses caught in mirrors, or vanishing through walls. The ghost of Glanville's daughter does not rest. Fitsford House. The historian Cox once declared it one of the best authenticated ghosts in Devon. But those who have stood alone in Fitsford House after dark know it's more than just a story. This is a warning. Love, betrayal, and justice have left their mark, and she is still waiting. They say that when midnight cloaks the moors in shadow, a dreadful sound breaks the silence near Fitsford House. The rattling of ancient wheels, forged not from wood or iron, but from bone. Wicked Lady Howard rides again. From the ruins of Fitsford to the dark edges of Oakhampton Park, her spectral coach tears through the night. But this is no ordinary carriage. It creaks and groans under the weight of its terrible history, its frame built from the bones of 4 murdered husbands, all hers. At the reins sits a headless coachman, silent and still, other than the faint jingle of chains and the cold whistle of the wind echoing through the air. And at the front, leading this morbid procession, is something far worse. A skeletal hound with hollow eyes, or in darker versions, a monstrous black dog, frothing and silent, that stops for nothing and no one. Each night, she is condemned to ride this haunted path, and each night she must stop at the foot of the ancient castle mound to pick a single blade of grass. Just one blade. She is doomed to repeat this journey every night until the entire mound lies bare. Not a single blade left. Only when the grass is gone can her spirit finally rest. But centuries have passed and she still rides. So if you're walking the lanes near Tavistock under a moonless sky and you hear the clatter of hooves behind you, don't look back. Don't run. Just pray the hound hasn't caught your scent. Tavistock Abbey. In the shadows of Tavistock, where the mighty abbey once ruled the land, one jagged remnant still stands. Betsy Grimble's tower. Its stones are cracked, its archway hollow, but the silence around it, it listens. Beneath the arch, you'll find a stone coffin, unearthed when the old chapter house was torn down. The bones once buried there now rest in a local church, but the spirit they belonged to, she never left. Her name was Betsy Grimble. Some say she was betrayed by a monk, others a soldier. But what remains certain is the staircase inside the gatehouse ran red with her blood. She was murdered there on the spiral steps. Her life ended in panic and pain. And the blood she spilled, it stained the stone and would not fade. For years, townsfolk whispered of the dark marks on the wall, always there, no matter the weather, no matter the years. Now, they say the stains are hard to find, but some believe they only vanish when she walks. She's been seen at the narrow windows of the tower, staring out, waiting. Not often, only when something is about to go terribly wrong. A police officer saw her in 1966, just days before the tragedy of Aberfan. Coincidence or warning? So, if you pass through Tavistock on a quiet evening and glance up at the ruined tower, and something pale moves in the window, watching, don't wave, don't speak, just keep walking. Because Betsy Grimble only shows herself when disaster is looming. And if she's watching you, it may already be too late. And so, Tavistock may seem like a charming Devonshire village by day, but as night falls, it becomes something else entirely. A place where whispers drift through alleyways, ghostly figures linger in the mist, and the past never truly rests. But what do you think? Could centuries of sorrow and mystery have soaked into Tavistock's very foundations, or are these just tales spun by time and imagination? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever experienced anything strange in Tavistock, we definitely want to hear your story. Nestled in the brooding heart of the Peak District, where steep hills loom and shadows gather early, lies the village of Castleton. A place of rare beauty by day, but once night falls, something far darker begins to stir. Beneath its picturesque charm runs a labyrinth of naturally formed caverns, deep, ancient hollows that have held secrets for centuries. But it's not just the stone that lingers in Castleton. It's whispers, footsteps, cries for mercy, carried on the wind. Winnett's Pass, winding and wild to the west of the village, is more than just a scenic route. It's where, in 1758, a young couple, Henry and Clara, fled to elope, only to be ambushed by thieves on a storm-torn night. Their cries echoed through the cliffs as they were brutally murdered for their valuables. Their bodies were hidden deep in a mine and forgotten. But the land did not forget, nor did the dead. Today, their restless spirits are said to haunt the pass, begging for mercy from men long gone, their voices rising in the wind like a terrible prayer. In the village below, Castle Hotel stands as another silent witness to the past. On Castle Street, the sorrowful spirit of Thomas, a man who took his own life, is said to linger, his silhouette seen hanging in still corners. Down in the cold, echoing cellar, the ghost of a nurse is said to wander, her footsteps soft but unshakable. In rare, bone-chilling moments, a bride in her wedding dress is seen gliding through rooms, her face pale, her fate unknown. Over it all towers Peveril Castle, clinging to the hilltop like a sentinel. One of the earliest Norman fortresses, it's now a crumbling monument to forgotten power. But it is not silent. On cold, clear nights, villagers report hearing ghostly singing from the ruins, and some have seen a spectral knight roaming the grounds, never speaking, never stopping. Alongside him, a black dog with burning eyes prowls the paths, vanishing into mist when approached. In Castleton, the past is not just remembered, it walks, and if you listen closely, the village will tell you its stories, whether you want to hear them or not. And so, as the mist rolls once more through the valley and the shadows stretch across Winnett's Pass, Castleton remains a village where history and the haunted walk hand in hand. From the tragic whispers of Henry and Clara to the mournful echoes from Peveril Castle's crumbling keep, this isn't just a place of beauty, but of lingering sorrow and restless spirits. But now we want to hear from you. Have you walked Castleton's winding lanes after dark, heard a voice on the wind, or seen a flicker of something that shouldn't be there? Drop your ghost stories or theories in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell, because we've got more chilling tales from Britain's most haunted villages coming next. Until then, keep your lights on. Where the river bends, so do the paths of the dead. Tucked quietly alongside the River Gower, just outside Chester, lies the quiet village of Tarvin. A place that at first glance appears nothing more than a postcard-perfect slice of the English countryside. But beneath its charm, a ghost weaves her way through time and space, linking some of Tarvin's oldest and eeriest landmarks. Her spectral presence has been reported across the village, from the brooding silhouette of Hocknell Hall to the worn stones of the ancient Packhorse bridges, and finally, to a pub whose name alone freezes the blood, the Headless Woman Inn. For those who know the legends, Tarvin is more than just a village. It's a haunted threshold between the living and the long dead. When the moon is high and the wind stills, a figure in white drifts silently through the corridors of Hocknell Hall. She's been seen countless times, a pale young woman in a flowing dress, gliding down staircases, staring from windows, and vanishing into the mist of the gardens. Some say she was a daughter of the Hucknall family, struck down in a tragic accident. Others believe she was a servant whose life ended in cruelty and silence. Whoever she was, she walks still. And when you see her, she's already seen you. Even when the hall stands empty, it never feels alone. Visitors speak in hushed tones of footsteps overhead, echoing through the upper floors. Heavy, deliberate, pacing back and forth, yet nobody is ever found. Some try to explain it away. The creaks of an old house, perhaps, but those who have lived within its walls know better. Because the footsteps don't stop, they follow you. The heart of the house lies in its ancient library, lined with dusty shelves and the scent of aged paper. But it's no sanctuary. It's a trap of whispers. Books have been known to fall without cause. The temperature drops as you cross the threshold, and always there's the feeling that somebody is watching you. Some claim to have seen him, a spectral figure of an elderly man, seated in an old armchair by the fire that no longer burns. He doesn't speak, he doesn't move, but his gaze lingers, a silent guardian of long-forgotten secrets. The gardens of Hucknall Hall bloom with more than flowers. After dark, they come alive with the dead. Shadowy forms are seen flitting between trees, only to disappear when pursued. Soft voices murmur from the hedgerows, conversations that cannot be traced, always just out of reach. Many have described walking the grounds only to be overcome by a sudden chill, as though something unseen has passed straight through them. And the unease, it clings to you, even when you leave. Hucknall Hall is beautiful, yes, but it remembers. It watches, and it mourns those who once walked its halls, and those who still do. Because some doors, once opened, are never truly closed, and at Hucknall Hall, some spirits have never left. So, whether it's the phantom footsteps along Tarvin's ancient lanes, the flickering lights in the old rectory, or the whispered voices that ride the night wind, one thing's for sure. This quiet Cheshire village holds far more than meets the eye. But, what do you think? Are the spirits of Tarvin simply echoes of the past, or is something still watching from the shadows? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Have you visited Tarvin? Experienced anything strange yourself? I'd love to hear your stories. And if you enjoy exploring the haunted corners of Britain, don't forget to like and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next, because the next village might be even darker. Perched on the hillside, staring solemnly over Boscastle Harbour, stands a building with charm, elegance, and unrest. The Wellington Hotel may look like a cosy Cornish inn, but behind that welcoming smile lies a much darker truth. A history steeped in tragedy, and a present haunted by those who never truly left. Built in the 16th century, it began as a coaching inn, a resting place for weary travellers seeking refuge from the stormy Cornish coast. Over the years, it evolved. Its name changed, walls shifted, but some things lingered. In 2004, a devastating flood swallowed much of the village. The hotel was battered by the waters, its lower floors consumed. But when it was finally rebuilt, something else was stirred awake. Old spirits, newly restless. The first of the phantoms is not one of violence, but of love beyond the grave. Novelist Thomas Hardy and his wife are said to walk arm in arm through the halls, just as they did in life. Guests have spotted them in fleeting moments, never speaking, never acknowledging, just quietly walking together, as if the hotel has become their final chapter. But not all spirits are so gentle. In room 9, one guest was awoken by something unnatural. An elderly woman, pale and stern, stood at the foot of her bed, before suddenly leaping forward and pinning her to the mattress. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. Only when the spirit vanished did she sit up, breathless, shaken, unsure if it had even happened. But the scratch marks on her arms said otherwise. A darker figure still roams the hotel. A man in black, clad in a frock coat, hair tied back in a long ponytail. Witnesses say he stands silently in the corner of a room, watching, always watching, until you notice him. Then he turns away and vanishes into the shadows. Then there's the girl. A transparent child, no older than 7, has been seen near rooms 15, 16 and 17, skipping down the hall, her laughter soft and strange. She smiles at guests. Some smile back, until they watch her walk through the door without opening it. She never speaks, but she seems playful, curious, almost like she's trying to play hide and seek with the living. Nobody knows her name. No records match her face. But the living aren't meant to see what lies beyond the walls. The Wellington Hotel is not just a place to rest your head. It's a crossroads, a vessel for the past, a mirror for the living and for the dead. And so, as the sea mist curls through the narrow lanes of Boscastle and the ancient stones whisper secrets only the brave dare to hear, one question lingers. Do the spirits of Boscastle still roam its windswept cliffs and shadowed cottages? Or are they just echoes of tales long told by flickering candlelight? If you've ever visited this eerie village or experienced something you can't explain, we want to hear your story. Drop a comment below, share your thoughts, or tell us what haunted location we should explore next. And remember, some doors, once opened, never truly close. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep your lantern close. The next story might be closer than you think. Nestled deep in the heart of Stratford-upon-Avon, the birthplace of Shakespeare himself, lies a place where time has not only stood still, but grown twisted and dark with age. Preserved fragments of England's most brutal and mysterious era, and one of the most haunted places in the entire country. Welcome to the Tudor World Museum. This isn't your average historical tour. The building that houses the museum dates back over 400 years, surviving plagues, executions, and civil unrest. Once a bustling tavern and brothel during the Tudor period, its timber-framed walls have soaked in centuries of suffering, sin, and secrets. Beneath the creaking floorboards and behind warped doors, it's said that the echoes of the past have never truly faded. They've lingered, watching. Visitors come for the history, but many leave with a feeling of being watched, followed, even touched. The museum's winding corridors and dimly lit chambers are filled with eerie recreations of Tudor life. Plague doctors, gallows, torture devices, all disturbingly lifelike. But it's not the mannequins people fear. It's what moves when nothing should. Paranormal investigators have long suspected something dark lurks here. Some say it's the spirit of a young girl, seen sobbing in the corner of the old tavern room. Others report a malevolent presence in the dungeon area, an unseen force that whispers in your ear or grips your arm in the cold, musty dark. The most terrifying stories come from those brave enough to stay after hours. Footsteps echo in empty halls. Doors slam for no reason. And once, a visitor swore they saw a shadow figure glide across the floor, just inches from where they stood, vanishing through the stone wall as if swallowed by time itself. Even the museum staff, hardened by years of retelling these tales, admit there are rooms they'd rather not enter alone. But perhaps the most unnerving part of all is this. No one really knows how many lives passed through these walls, how many desperate souls perished during the plague, how many wrongfully executed, how many secrets still trapped in its timber frame. So, if you find yourself in Stratford-upon-Avon and you're drawn to the darker side of history, step inside the Tudor World Museum. Just be aware that once you enter, you're not alone, and something may just follow you home. And finally, we come to the village named by Guinness World Records as the most haunted village in England. In the quiet fields of Kent lies a village where the dead refuse to sleep. Pluckley, charming by day, but chilling by night, is believed to be the most haunted village in England. From the shadowy figure of a highwayman pinned to a tree at Fright Corner, from the screams that echo from the ruins of the old brickworks, the ghosts here don't whisper, they cry out, and if the stories are true, they're still waiting to be heard. With just over 1,000 residents, Pluckley may seem like your typical sleepy English village, but something else resides here too. In recent years, over a dozen ghostly sightings have chilled locals and visitors alike. These are 10 of Pluckley's most spine-chilling tales. Number 1. The Highwayman of Fright Corner. There's a reason they call it Fright Corner. In the 18th century, a highwayman made this lonely stretch his final battleground. Engaged in a violent clash with the village peacekeepers, he was brutally run through with a sword, pinned to an old oak tree where he died in agony. Now they say the fight plays out again and again under the veil of fog, a ghostly duel that always ends the same way. Number 2. Dicky Buss's Lane. Dappled light through the leaves, birds song in the distance. It looks peaceful, but don't be fooled. This woodland lane, named after local miller Dicky Buss, hides a grim tale. After World War I, a despondent schoolteacher took his own life, hanging himself in these very woods. Weeks later, it was Dicky who found the body. Now, visitors claim to see a shadow dangling in the trees and feel a cold dread that chokes the air when they walk too far alone. Number 3. Screams of agony. The scream doesn't sound human. It rips through the trees like something alive, high-pitched, endless, full of agony so raw it makes your skin crawl and your blood run cold. And once you hear it, you never forget it. He is the screaming man of Pluckley. The story goes back to a man who worked at the old brickworks. He fell, or was pushed, into a clay pit and was buried alive, his lungs filling with earth as he screamed for help that never came. And now his spirit is trapped, still screaming, still desperate. Walkers who enter the woods at dusk report it. The scream, the cold air, the feeling of being watched. Some say they see fleeting shapes between the trees, so if you ever find yourself near Pluckley, and the wind dies, and everything goes too quiet, listen closely, because if you hear the howls of agony, you may already be too deep. Number 4. Maltman's Hill. Imagine walking alone at night when you hear it, the thunder of hooves behind you. But there's no road, no riders, just the unmistakable sound of a coach tearing through time. Locals speak of a ghostly, horse-drawn carriage seen gliding along Maltman's Hill, lanterns aglow and wheels turning above the earth. In 1997, a driver almost crashed when he heard it. Hooves on cobblestones where only tarmac lay. The horses are gone, but something still rides. Number 5. The Red Lady of St. Nicholas. In the graveyard of Pluckley's ancient church, one spirit grieves eternally. Lady Dering, buried in the 1100s in a lead coffin, was laid to rest with a single red rose. Now, she's seen wandering among the headstones, wailing softly, searching in vain for the grave of her stillborn child. Locals call her the Red Lady, a figure of sorrow, beauty, and unending heartbreak. Number 6. The Menacing Monk of Greystones. Once known as Rectory Cottage, Greystones stands cold and quiet, but not empty. Built in 1863, it housed the local rector, and perhaps something else. Visitors once claimed to see a hooded monk gliding through its halls. Since its name changed, he's gone silent, but they say he's only hiding, watching from the corners, waiting for his moment to return. Number 7. The Gypsy Ghost of Pinnock Bridge. On warm days, you might see her, a woman in mist, sitting quietly on the edge of the old stone bridge, puffing on a pipe. She was a gypsy who made her living selling watercress from the stream below, until a tragic accident burned her alive on that very spot. She never speaks, she doesn't move, she just sits there, watching. Number 8. The Ghosts of the Blacksmith's Arms. Once called the Spectre's Arms and the Ghost's Arms, this pub wears its hauntings with pride. Inside, 3 ghostly figures are said to roam. A Tudor maid, moving through the shadows. A coachman, staring into the hearth as if remembering a life long gone. And a cavalier, haunting the upper rooms, searching for something or someone he never found. Number 9. The Misty Miller. Dickie Buss isn't finished haunting Pluckley. His old windmill, the Pinnocks, fell silent in 1930, then was struck by lightning 9 years later. Now ruined, the mill draws attention when storms approach, because just before thunder cracks, Dickie is seen again. A hazy figure among the ruins, caught forever between the earth and sky. Number 10. The Black Horse Inn. At the Black Horse, the ghosts don't show themselves, they steal. Cutlery vanishes from tables, glasses slide on their own, and whatever disappears will almost always return, but only after a few days, and never quite where you left it. They're pranksters, perhaps, or maybe they're trying to be remembered. And so, as night falls over Pluckley and the mists curl once more through its crooked lanes, one question remains. Do the spirits truly linger here, or are they just stories whispered to thrill the curious and the brave? Whether it's the screaming man in the woods, the phantom coach rattling down the lanes, or the lady in red forever searching for something lost, Pluckley holds tight to its haunted crown. But what do you think? Are these just chilling legends, or is there something more waiting in the dark corners of England's most haunted village? Let us know your thoughts or your own ghostly encounters in the comments below. And always remember, in Pluckley, the silence might just be listening.